Master Ango said, "Heaven cannot cover it, earth cannot support it, empty space cannot contain it, sun and moon cannot illumine it." What is this? It is the most important question of your life, a question that everyone wants an answer to. If you are not yet intimate with it, it is as if you are separated from it by the 3,000 worlds. But if you become enlightened in relation to the slightest object, then whatever you take up, there will be nothing that is not it. My teisho today is on case 7 of the Hekiganroku, or the Blue Cliff Record, all about a monk who asks Master Hogen a question about the Buddha. And I'll begin by reading Master Ango's introduction to the case. The 1,000 sages have not transmitted the single word before sound. If you have never seen it personally, it's as if it were worlds away. Even if you discern it before sound, you're still not a sharp fellow. Therefore it is said, the sky cannot cover it, the earth cannot support it, empty space cannot contain it, sun and moon cannot illumine it. Where there is no Buddha, and you alone are called the honored one, for the first time you've amounted to something. Otherwise, if you are not yet this way, penetrate through on the tip of a hair and release the great shining illumination. Then, in all directions, you will be independent and free in the midst of phenomena. Whatever you pick up, there is nothing that is not it. And then the main case, which is quite short. A monk said to Master Hogen, "My name is Teisho. I ask you, what is Buddha?" Master Hogen said, "You are Teisho." And then Master Secho's verse on the case. In the river country, the spring breeze hardly arises. Far away, deep among blossoms, the partridge sings. Ascending the falls, the carp became a dragon. Yet still, by night, fools fish for him below. So this case features Master Hogen, who lived from 885 to 958 CE. He was ordained at the age of 7, very, very young, and eventually inherited the Dharma from his teacher, Master Jizo. He is also well known for cultivating or kind of curating a particular school of Zen practice that came to be named after him, the Hogen school, one of the so-called 5 houses of Zen. He was extremely influential. He attracted students from all over China and eventually transmitted the Dharma to 63 heirs, who then spread out throughout the entire empire and even into Korea. Now, in this case, we have this monk who comes in and says, "My name is Teisho. I ask you, what is Buddha?" And I think before we can effectively explore Hogen's answer to this question, we really need to consider the question itself pretty carefully. It's an important question. And there have been literally hundreds, if not thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who have asked this question, what is Buddha? And ostensibly one of the reasons they do so is pretty straightforward. They want to know what it's like to be possessed of unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi. But in reality, the people who ask this question are not always after the same thing, nor do they have the same capacity to understand or appreciate the answers they get. Now, if someone is asking what is Buddha because they want to know what it's like to be perfectly enlightened, it's probably not going to help them very much. An ordinary explanation is not going to turn you into a Buddha. Descriptions, concepts, words, they're all helpful in practice, but by themselves they're generally not enough to cause personal transformation. Conceptual knowledge is a guide for our practice, and the Buddha himself used concepts from the very first day he preached the Dharma. We could say, at least initially, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path are conceptual maps for our practice lives. So words and concepts aren't quite enough. If you ask what is Buddha before you've had some kind of insight into your own Buddha nature, it's like asking what olives taste like when you've never tasted one yourself. Somebody can describe it all day long in sumptuous detail, but about all you're going to get is that they're salty, which really doesn't do olives any justice, does it? It doesn't really help you have the experience in any way. You have to taste them for yourself. You know, sometimes I have students come to Doksan and ask questions about Buddhist philosophy or psychology or about the ideas they've come across in books that they've been reading, which is all fine, I guess, but really they haven't yet fully grasped the difference between the conceptual and the experiential. They think they've got Zen because they have a hold of some pretty fancy ideas. They might be good ideas, but it's not the same thing as personal, experiential insight. Now, really, it's one of the things that draws some of us to Zen in the first place. The idea that we have to personally verify the teaching of the Buddha seems better than being expected to just believe something because someone said it was true. It seems better than inheriting the truth from a pulpit somewhere. I mean, it can be difficult if you have to do it on your own. When I was a teenager, I had to sit with myself. I had to be myself, and many times I didn't want to be me. Sometimes I didn't even want to be. So it's important to understand in this case that when Echo asks, "What is Buddha?" he's not asking a philosophical question. He's already had some kind of Kensho experience, and that makes all the difference. His question is coming straight from the gut. He's just bursting with realization about the nature of Buddha. He has come to Hogen with a very personal, experiential insight into his own nature. The same insight that Buddha came to when he was sitting beneath the bo tree and suddenly uttered the famous words, "Wonder of wonders, I and all beings and the great earth are simultaneously awakened." It's a very expansive kind of experience, one in which the limitations of our ordinary dualistic view of reality are suddenly shattered, and everything opens up into this vast, unhindered view of reality. So this is what Master Ango is referring to in his introduction when he writes, "The sky cannot cover it, the earth cannot support it, empty space cannot contain it, sun and moon cannot illumine it." Well, what can you do with that? What can you do with that kind of realization? You can't just sit on it or sit in it. The you that you were is seemingly not the you that you are now. And yet you still have to wash the dishes. You still have to take out the garbage. You have to do something with your insight. You have to reckon with how it affects the way you live your life. Strange as it may sound, you may not really understand how to deal with an insight experience. There's this sudden, tremendous upheaval, and you have to figure out what it all means. What does it amount to? You've been changed somehow. Your view is not the same, but you may not be sure why or how or what it is you're going to do or where you're going to go from there. All you know is that your idea of who you were has fallen away. You're no longer like a solitary ego living separately from other things and people. And so you have this question. Now it's a burning question. Who am I? Well, in one sense, we can just say, you are the Buddha, and the Buddha is you. We actually do say this in the Jukai ceremony when people formally receive the precepts, the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, and are then Buddhists. We said it in the Gate of Sweet Nectar ceremony that we performed last weekend. I am the Buddha, and the Buddha is me. It means that you are identified with the Dharmakaya, the inconceivable essence of the Buddha. And at that point, it's not so easy to figure out how you might introduce yourself or talk about yourself. I suppose it's possible Ho could have gone to Hogen and asked, who am I? But he's really in such a state that there's hardly any ego there to ask a question about the ego. Another translation of this case really kind of brings that home because it's expressed in the third person voice. It says, Ho asks the teacher, what is Buddha? As if neither Ho nor Hogen were even there. But either way, Ho is asking straight from his gut and from the perspective, let's say, of the Dharmakaya. So he asks, he really has to ask, not who am I, but what is Buddha? What is this Buddha? And this is where Master Hogen comes in, a tremendously gifted and sensitive teacher. It takes him but a glance to see Ho's state of mind, which has been likened to a fruit that was so ripe Hogen didn't even need to pluck it. He just had to gently blow on it and it came free. He just says, you are Ho. You are Ho. So we have to ask, how does this answer speak to the question, what is Buddha? At first it just seems like a non sequitur. Why does Hogen need to tell Ho what his name is? Well, he really does need to. But it's not because Ho forgot who he is. It's all because he needs Ho to take a little step backward. See, our practice is always about coming back to the beginning, back to our original home. The problem is that we often get stuck along the way. And we think about Zen practice as just another scheme that allows us to indulge in thoughts of gain or attainment. In our culture, it's almost impossible to think about Zen practice without an attitude of consumerism getting in the way. We indulge in these thoughts of gain or attainment, like, I have a Raksu, he doesn't. I have a Zen name, she doesn't. I've passed such and such many koans, they haven't. Actually, attainment-oriented thinking comes up quite often in koan practice. A lot of people get hung up on just getting past on their koans. And the more the better, they think. I've passed 10 koans. I've passed 100 koans, 200, 700. But I hope as one matures in practice, you might begin to let go of that kind of thinking and understand something that's far more important, which is how your insight into any particular case applies to your life. I don't care about the case. I mean, I'm happy if you pass. I'm happy to, if I can pass someone. But what matters is that we see how it applies in our lives. And it can take quite a bit of work, quite a bit of time. You see, our ability to actualize our insight always lags behind the moment of awakening. Years ago, when I was starting out with koans, I was given a one-liner. It was, how do you get out of a stone grave that is locked from the outside? How do you get out of a stone grave that is locked from the outside? And this one was really tough for me because it was aimed directly at all of my karmic tendencies. Just layers of conditioning that were so much a part of how I identified myself that I couldn't see them at all. It would have been like trying to see behind my own eyes. And a lot of it had to do with, being able to solve problems or being successful or powerful or wise. Basically, it was a group of traits that I suppose everyone has to some degree. I think men are probably more prone to it because of social conditioning that we grow up with. So, I had to work on this koan night and day for a couple of months. And when I did finally pass it, I was in tears. Tears. I'm talking about choking, sobbing, gut-wrenching tears. It felt like I had been torn to shreds. Well, of course, I hadn't been torn to shreds. It was my conditioning that had been torn up. My self-clinging, especially in one particular area, had been kind of ripped apart. So my tears were not tears of sorrow or grief, they were tears of relief. I was able to put down this terrible burden that I had been carrying around. And then came the task of figuring out how this was going to apply in my life. It took a while. I had to work at it. But eventually I fundamentally changed. I changed how I respond to seemingly unsolvable problems. And today I feel pretty confident that there is no stone grave you can put me in that I cannot escape. It's not a trick. It's just a matter of taking a little step backward. Not forward, backward. because even the experience of enlightenment can become the departure point for attainment-oriented thinking. Everyone who experiences it inevitably struggles with the knowledge that they are enlightened, which then becomes a hindrance, an attachment, another thing to hang on to. And this is exactly where Eicho is at. He's a Buddha, but he's a struggling Buddha. He doesn't know how to deal with this. And he has to figure out that enlightened people go on practicing for the rest of their lives, trying to strip away every trace of awakening. It's a lifelong practice of always taking another step backward. In his essay, Genjo Koan, Eihei Dogen Zenji says, to study Zen is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is fundamentally a matter of taking a step backward. And in his Fukan Zazengi, or Instructions for Zazen, Dogen says, put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases, and learn to take the backward step that turns your light inward. Elsewhere he writes, there is good reason why even those who reach the mountain of treasure cannot distinguish between jewels and rocks. They do not yet understand the backward step. Do you see Eicho in this? Eicho had reached the mountain of jewels, and that is precisely why he can't distinguish jewels from rocks. Everything's a jewel, even the dirty soles of his feet. Eicho had realized his Buddha nature, and just like Shakyamuni, he sees that he and all beings and the great earth are Buddha. Everything, everywhere is Buddha. Everywhere he steps, it's just more Buddha. It's a glorious experience, but what's he going to do now? If everything and everyone is Buddha, what's the point of being one? How can one be called the world-honored one if everyone is the world-honored one? I mean, is there just one? Or are there many Buddhas? Is one the real Buddha and the rest imposter Buddhas? I mean, it gets to the point where it's like that old TV game show, What's My Line? You want to jump up and shout, will the real Buddha please stand up? Who is the real Buddha? Is it Eicho? Hogen? Is it me? Is it you? Can it realistically be everyone? According to Scripture, there can only be one Buddha in the world at any given time. It is said that if there were ever two Buddhas in the world, the earth would wobble off its axis and be destroyed. And then, how do you reckon with Master Engo's statement in the introduction, where he says that it is only when there is no Buddha, and you alone are called the honored one, that you will be independent and free in the midst of phenomena? How can you be the honored one when there is no Buddha? To see through this, you have to have Eicho's eye and Hogen's eye. You have to take that little step backward. When you do that, then nothing will prevent you from becoming the one and only Buddha in a universe full of Buddhas. Let go of your fantasies, your justifications, your rationalizations, and especially with regard to this case, perhaps especially your piety, your reverence, your worshipful behaviors. Let go of words and concepts. Enlightenment, Zen, Nirvana, and yes, Buddha. Most of all, you will have to give up your humility to actualize it. So our practice is ultimately not about the Buddha. When you find the Buddha always disappears. It is why, perhaps, we call him the thus come one and the thus gone one. So our practice then is to learn that the real Buddha always walks backward. When you do that, you're just like the carp in Sacho's poem, leaping up the waterfalls, turning into a dragon, flying away, free and independent. Show me any Zen outside of this, and I'll show you a bunch of fools fishing by night in the pools below the waterfall. They're casting their nets to their furthest reach, hoping to catch a golden dragon and make it their own. Yet all they're going to get from that is a boatload of thrashing bottom feeders. The real dragon flew away a long, long time ago. So don't be fooled. There is no Zen outside of your life, here and now. Don't go chasing after someone else's awakening, no matter how profound or deep or moving or powerful it might seem. And what do you think Teisho found that you can't discover on your own? It's everywhere around you in all its sumptuous and delicate beauty, like a partridge calling from among the flowers. Why is it that you can't accept that? Just know that whatever you pick up, there is nothing that is not it. Whatever you do, whether it's frying onions or trimming the hedges or taking the kids to school, just find a way to introduce yourself to yourself. Thank you for listening. If you found this talk helpful, I hope you would do me the kindness of giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. That will help me continue to do the things I'm trying to do to perpetuate the Buddha Dharma. And of course, I always appreciate it when people leave comments or questions. So if you have them, please feel free. And if you don't have anything in particular to say, maybe you can leave a comment with your answer to this question. The past is gone, and you are here. How can you take a backward step?